All right, I've been really thinking about this. This here is a Canadian mortgage calculator here. And this is just a standard sort of mortgage calculator I found online. Here's the company that I am borrowing this from. It's a below the screen. What you see is tons of like lines and lines and lines, rows and columns of spreadsheets. So, but I'm bringing this up because I think I found a way to actually beat the bank. And this is, I mean, I worked in banks. I worked in mortgage offices for two different banks, and I've been thinking about this for a long time. And I mean, we try to make money by, like, having bake sales and stuff. But if we arranged our finances properly, we would be in a radically better position in our communities if we began to work together with the knowledge in mind of what I'm about to show you. So here's some things right off the top here. So this is just a sample mortgage here. Let's say it's a $300,000 mortgage. There's your interest rate. Let's say it's monthly, 25-year term, 5-year, 25-year period amortization, 5-year period. And let's say it's going from 2021 to the end of 2025. So there's your 5 years. And of course, some things here to consider is after the 5-year term, you would have paid almost $50,000 in interest and $41,000 of principal. So just think about that. Your first 5 years of your mortgage, if you just go along with what the banks have told you to do, you're going to be paying more interest than principal. And if our interest was exactly the same as principal, that would be considered 100% interest rate. So what this tells us is over the course of 5 years, we're averaging over 100% interest rate. Okay, that's insane. That's insane. But that's how a mortgage curve works. A mortgage curve isn't like, hey, 3.5%, so I'm just going to get charged 3.5 flat. The idea of getting 3.5% throughout the whole life of the mortgage, that is not how mortgage curves work. And I'll scroll down a bit to show you what I mean right away, but just a couple more things right up front here. So here is just kind of like, if you stay on the regular payments, as you get to go down, and there's no extra payments involved. So the line is just one singular line, nothing exciting there. Here's a sample payment. Now here is where things are going to get fun. This all has to do with extra payments. Extra payments right there. And the reason why this matters is because a lot of people they fight to have these investments tucked away in their savings accounts. And, yeah, sure, you're making like maybe 6, I don't know, maybe even 10% on your investments, over the course of a few years. Let's say you get 5 years consistently of that. But as we can see right here, over the first 5 years, we have an average of over 100% interest rate. Okay, so there's a few things that we need to consider right off the front is like, how do we break the mindset that putting our money in investments is the right idea, even if you're getting a decent rate like this, when in reality, your interest rate could be a percentage rate like this, okay? So person A could instead extract the investments that they could and get out the cash and then put that cash on the principal and effectively save every monthly payment, so to speak. You're in the range of saving 100% of interest rate or more. And why? Because the interest you're paying is more than the actual principal right here. You're paying more. So, I mean, if the principal was exactly the same as the interest, then that would represent a 100% interest rate. So there is this mindset that I think that we need to look into a little more. So how are we utilizing our funds effectively so that we don't get caught in the trap of saying, yay, look at me, I'm getting 6 to 10% on my investments. Meanwhile, my interest rate at the beginning of the mortgage curve is insanely high. Okay, so what I'm convinced of is that the banks are, I don't want to just, they're businesses, right? They're designed to make money. That's what they want to do. And I think that a lot of people who are mathophobic or who just don't give it a second thought, just imagine that, oh, look, the bank is charging me 3.5%. Oh, that's a really low rate. I can invest my money and get 6%. So I'm really clearing a spread of 2.5% every month of my life. But that is horribly false, because at the beginning, the interest rate is like insanely high, then it goes down over time. Like the interest rate on your the effective interest rate on your very last few payments is almost nothing. Everything happens up here in the first half of the mortgage. So let's apart from this here. Now I'm gonna show you some of the numbers. I'm gonna scroll down and show you some numbers. Let me clear this board here. Okay, clear the board, roll down here. Right here we have, if we do no extra payments, we've got a principal of this and an interest of this. So I said an average of 100%, over 100% for the first 5 years. Your first payment, your interest rate, your effective interest rate on your first payment is 139%. Look at me, I'm getting 10% in my investments. That, we have to look at that. Is it worth it? Okay, your next payment, there's your interest, there's your principal. Your next payment's 138, and it goes down and down and down and down. So if we're doing monthly, here's month 12. So after the first year, okay, so your entire first year of paying interest is over 132%. Every payment, you're paying 132%. Okay, so let's continue to scroll down and see 13 to 24. After 2 years, the lowest interest rate you're paying per payment is 124%. Yikes. And if we go down further to month 36, the lowest is 116%. So that's the smallest interest rate you're paying per payment. Everything's higher. And on and on and on. So as we continue to look here, we get down to 60, payment 60. So that's the 5-year point. The 5-year point, you see your principal and interest are virtually the same. And so there is the effective interest rate after 5 years. So the first 5 years of a mortgage, regardless of what the actual dollar figure is, every payment you're paying 100% or more on interest. Okay. So now what that means for certain is that in your first 5 years of having a mortgage, if you had other investments, gosh, even 6, 8, even 10%, if you had other investments doing well, you could sell those things off, forego 10% interest or 8% interest, forego that, and in place of saving at least 100% interest. So basically, if you forego your investments or your just money sitting in your bank earning next to nothing, you'd be saving a pile of money, something that people would like go bonkers for if they could earn 100% interest. You're basically earning it. You're like reverse engineering your earning of this money. It's basically like the interest. It's basically like by paying it down earlier, you're gaining a non-loss, let's say, a non-loss of like what, 90% plus, okay? Gaining a non-loss in the money world is like, it's like when you get a deal, right? You buy something for $5 instead of $20, you have a non-loss of $15, you could say, or a savings, okay? Now those savings can be used elsewhere for real dollars, so it's translatable. So anyway, this is just after 5 years. That's only after 60 months. So what I want to enter now into is how a prepayment would work. So let me clear the drawing and just scroll back up here. There are some banks, I'm not just going to enter a prepayment, a random prepayment in here, although I could. The fact is that there are some banks that have a prepayment option. So what if we enter a prepayment option, an extra payment that is basically equivalent to the amount of the principal payment. So as you see, this first principal payment is $626.87. Let's just assume we're going to double up the principal every time. And because you see the principal goes up and up and up over time, this would actually be a minimum statement. So this is going to show a minimized effect, but it's still going to show the effect. So I'm going to put an extra payment of $627 every payment. Now look what happens to the interest rate for those first 5 years. Okay, so if we do an extra principal payment of even the very base, the basic amount, which was the principal of the first payment, if that's all we did, then our principal would be much bigger and our interest would still be what it was. But now the ratio of principal compared to interest would be different. And of course, that means the interest rate would be, as a proportion of principal, would be basically 875 over 1253, which turns out to be 0.6979, as you can see right there. So basically 70%. So instead of paying 130 something percent, I can't remember what it was, that's gone. And now we're paying only 70% interest rate, effective interest rate, by simply doing a principal double up. Now, here's the nice thing. Some banks offer a double up option where you can do this and it does not count against the 10% or the X percent that you're allowed to pay without prepayment penalty. Okay, so find a bank, if you have to use a bank at all, that offers a double up option and maximize that, because every payment that exists that you'll have to do, suddenly your effective interest rate is reduced significantly. What, 130 minus 70, you basically saved 60% interest per payment. Okay, now, if people knew that they could save 60% on something, they would bite on it. Now, this doesn't even include any changes in behavior other than the fact that you have to throw more money down on your mortgage. And you know what? Maybe that means eating boiled eggs for a while and not going for beers or having a diet pop and free refills. I don't know. It would demand a little change in lifestyle, but look at the difference in cost. You're saving 60% per payment. Okay, now let's see what else happens when we do that. Suppose we do those extra payments of $627. Take a look at how much money is paid at the end of the term. I'm going to change that back to 0. So 0. Okay. Look at principal paid right here, $41,000. If I add 627 every payment, your principal is 82. So you've basically doubled the amount of principal. And if you'll notice, the interest stays roughly the same, 45,000, 49,000. It's actually a little more. So even by doubling up, you do save a little interest, and that's because the principal and interest ratio changes per payment a little bit, okay? So if you double up your principal, which doesn't cost you anything extra in terms of mortgage terms, your principal goes down, and your principal, you pay way more principal. Your interest is a little less because you've been paying your principal down a little faster. Okay, and look at that outstanding balance. After 5 years, you're only at 217 left, whereas if you have 0 there, you had 258. Okay, what about, how does that impact down here at the fully amortized amount, which is like at the end of the mortgage? So right now, if I have no prepayments, I'm paying $150,000 in extra interest. If I just double up the principal, my interest is going to go down to $86,000. So I've saved $44,000 of interest. But this is saying over the life of the whole mortgage. Okay, so that's just a simple double up that doesn't impact. Okay, so the question is, if you're going to save $44,000, is that more valuable to do than having GICs in the bank, guaranteed investment? Is that more valuable than having cash in a savings account for a rainy day that will sit there forever, losing value against inflation? Okay, so that's that part there. Now, anybody can do extra payments because that is what a lot of banks set people up for. They offer that as a competitive advantage for their bank. Please use our bank. We offer this great thing. Okay. Now, what is also missing from this picture is the idea that we can do 10%. Oh, let's say it's 10%. Some banks, it's more. You can pay 10% of principal every year on the calendar, sorry, of your mortgage. Let's say it's like, I don't know, On this example, it's January 1st to December 31st, but if your mortgage was June 27th, it would be June 27th to June 27th. So 10% a year. Now, this mortgage that we're dealing with, what did we have? $300,000. Okay. So that means we can pay $30,000 extra per year. Now, when can we put that down? Anytime within the year. Let's just imagine that instead of just putting that down mid-year, let's just say we put it down at the day after we got the mortgage. So let's see what's going to happen here. So instead of 627 down here, we're going to have 30,627. Let's see, 30,627. Oh boy, not that stuff. Okay, there. So that's, get out of there. Okay, so I just put in 30,627 on that one thing. Now, what that did is it made my implicit mortgage, my interest rate actually to be 2%. So if the principal I put on one payment is $31,000 and my interest remains the same according to the mortgage schedule, then that means that my interest rate is 2.8% on that. The interest, $875 is 2.8% of 31,000. So that's nice. Now the rest of it, if I'm just using adding 627 every payment, just like the original principal amount, my interest rate after this monstrous payment is only 58%. Remember before it was like 130%. No prepayments, it was 130% interest for like all of these. So we see we've dropped the interest rate by 80% now by having a monstrous prepayment up front. Now, some people would say, why didn't you just get a mortgage that was only $270,000 instead of having a mortgage of $300,000? And here's the thing. If we would have gotten a mortgage at $270,000, we would just skate down the mortgage curve like normal. However, if we have a mortgage at $300,000, and then we do a monster payment right away, what that does is it skates us down a certain proportion down the mortgage curve before the second payment. So second payment is here. And at this point versus this point, okay, let's call that A versus B. At A, the interest is less, it's a lower rate than at B. Interest is less at A. Right? So the name of the game in beating a mortgage or beating the bank is to skate down the mortgage curve as quickly as possible. And you can do that if you get a larger mortgage and then do a massive pay down right away versus having a smaller mortgage, but having no acceleration on the curve. Okay? No acceleration on the curve. It just is what it is. Well, guess what? Then the bank takes home its 130% interest all the time. So let's get out of that pattern. Okay, so we don't want to do that. We're going to put this monster payment right on the front here. So you get a highest mortgage as you can, and then you do a massive prepayment on the very next day. Okay, now what has that done to our numbers? So let's just scroll back up here. So if I do that, my total payments for my entire mortgage are at the fully amortized thing here are $367, and I'm only paying $67,000 interest over the course of the entire thing. If I drop that $30,000 on there on the first day, if I have it kicking around, right? Which obviously is a low probability play, but that's all the more reason to get the higher mortgage and then do a massive payment on the first day to skate yourself down the mortgage curve to get to a lower proportional interest rate. Okay, if I didn't have that payment, let's just see what would happen here. So I'm going to change this back to 627, and we're going to watch this change. So $67,000. Let's change that back to 627 and see what happens. Okay, there's 627. The 67,000 goes up to 86,000 right there. Let's change that again. 30,627 interest savings. Okay. So we save $82,000 when we do the 30,000 payment versus if we just have 627, we save only $63,000. Okay, let's see how long it took. Say 7 years. If we have the extra payment, we're down to 13 years. Okay. So, geez, is that really worth it? Well, I don't know. If you're looking at in terms of trying to defeat having to pay the bank an exorbitant amount of interest, effective interest rate per payment, then putting as much money as you can up front is actually the way to go. And then the question is, what if you don't have that money? Should you borrow it? And then that's another question. It would depend where you are on your mortgage curve. At the beginning of your mortgage curve, you have the highest amounts of interest rates. Let's just go back to that here. We're going to change this to 0 here. So it's 0, and we have no extra payments. Okay, so look at that interest rate over here, 140%, 130%. Okay, if you don't like the idea of that, then we want to do this here. Oh, I know. That's where we should put the 30,000, and that's where we're going to put the 627. So our extra payments are 627. It seems to start on the second line. I'm just going to correct that right now. Okay, there it is. Again, we see our mortgage, instead of being 25 years down, is now down to 13 years, just on that alone. And now here's the great part. Here's the great part. I'm going to just get rid of this, and I've ran the numbers on this a little bit. I'm going to show this with 0. I'm going to get rid of this 30,000 payment and just show you kind of what happens if we were to pay a prepayment of the same principal amount. Okay. Now every payment you do, if you do a principal prepayment of a double up payment, so day 1, I'm paying this and I'm using a double up. So don't forget about this. I'm using a double up, and that means I'm paying the principal. I'm doubling up and virtually paying the same principal again. Now, what that means is that this interest value here, thereabouts, we do not have to pay. It's just not applied because this part here has been paid in advance. Okay, so that's day 1, or payment 1. Let's call that payment 1. Payment 2 begins here. So we pay our interest and principal, and I do a principal prepayment. And because of that, this $869.50 is not paid by us. I mean, these numbers would be tweaked a little bit because of the compounding would be changed because of the prepayments, but for all intents and purposes, let's just use these numbers. It's marginally, it's not worth parsing out all the difference there. So there's my second payment. By doing a double up payment, by my third payment, I'm already on my fifth principal payment. So I'm going to do my third payment, which is this, and I'm going to double it up and I'm going to pay this. So there's my third payment. And because I've done the double up, that means that this $865.80 is simply not paid. So if you want to get an idea, we'll follow the pattern. You'll do another one here. So there's the fourth payment goes together, and I double it up and I get this. And then that means that this payment is not paid. And so what I see is on any mortgage curve is that interest on line 2, 4, 6, 8. So on 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. Whoops, 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. Those are all taken out. What that is, that's saved interest. Now, if you can figure out a way how to virtually reverse engineer an earning, so to speak, of $873 in 1 month, then let me know. But the best way you can earn that kind of money is by not paying it. If you can get away with not paying it, you've effectively earned it because money is not coming out of your wallet. It's like the reverse side of the money game. It's like what you don't pay, you save. What you save is like money in your pocket. Okay, so on the second month, you're effectively earning $869. On your third month, your third payment, you're basically earning $865. Your fourth month, you're basically earning $862. You're earning these sick, huge amounts of money because you're not paying them. Okay, so if you add those up, okay, like 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. So basically 850 times 10, that's 800, that's 80, but that's like $10,000 after a year. You basically got like $10,000 after a single year by saving the second, the fourth, the sixth, there maybe, okay, not $10,000. My math is wrong. Okay, let's do that one. That one's going to be saved, and that one's going to be saved. So there's 6 of them. Sorry, my bad. There's 6 of them times 850. That's like I don't know. That's like $5,000, something like that. You're basically earning $5,000 in saved interest costs by doing the double up thing, which does not impact your mortgage structure at all. Okay. Can you think of a better way to earn that kind of money in 1 year other than like legally without having to actually do much else? All you had to do is put a few extra bucks down. Okay. So extra payment equals savings, which is like money in your pocket. Okay. Which is it's kind of reverse thinking because you're putting the money in your pocket, although you're spending more money to do it. This reminds me of the time that I bought a really good deal on something, and I bought a lot of stock in this stuff. So I didn't need to, I bought them at like $1 each. And then when they were $3 each, I didn't need to buy them because I had enough. Well, let's call it toothpaste. If you buy toothpaste on sale for $1, and then you buy 100 of them, or let's say 10, and then toothpaste goes up to $5, to buy 10 would be $50. You've basically saved $40 of not having to pay. So that's the idea. So anything this stuff is basically, we're accelerating ourselves down the mortgage curve by this pattern here. Now, what would that look like? The mortgage curve, so as you saw earlier, it kind of looks like something like this, okay? Now, every time that we do a payment, so here we are, an extra interest payment, we go down a bit. There we go, down a bit. And what you get is a curve that comes down a lot earlier, okay? And if you do more and more payments, it comes down earlier and earlier. And what this is on the bottom is time, right? So if you want to have your mortgage till for the whole 25 years, sure. But if you want to stop at 15 years or 12 years, then these extra payments are going to do that. And that way, at that time, all the money you're making and stuff you can actually use for what you want to use. So the real question becomes, is it worth it to take out our investments to pay down a mortgage? Or better yet, is it worth it to take out a loan or borrow a loan from someone or a B lender, like a trusted credit union, let's say, or a gathering or cooperative of families? So let's look at this year 1 situation here again, okay? So if we were to pay $627 per month extra, which means a principal double up, that would cost us an extra $6,500, okay, over the month. That's all it would cost. But the amount of money saved would be all this. I just rounded it to 860 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 860 times 6 is 5,160. So you would spend $6,500, get back effectively 5,160. 5,160. And what is the rate of return on that, so to speak? Well, that's 5,160 over 6,500. And we're talking, okay, that's like 516 over 650. That's like 250 over 325, roughly. That's like 25 over 30. That's like 5 over 6. So that's like 83%, roughly. That's just estimation, okay? So in 1 year, you can get a net effect gain in position overall, including avoiding foregoing extra costs of 83% if you have an extra $6,500 on hand. Now, here's the thing. Can you borrow $6,500 from somebody? Okay, if you borrowed $6,500 for somebody, even at 10% over the year, all you'd be doing is paying them $650, let's say, every year. Let's say there was no compounding, just for simplicity. If you couldn't pay that loan back after, so 5,160, geez, after like 8 years of this, take like 8 years. If you paid back that loan within 8 years, you'd still be ahead of the game. Your interest here would still be less than the 5,160 you're getting, okay? Now, the beautiful news is that if you're able to pay off that loan, you borrow $6,500 at 10% or less, of course. Maybe you know someone who will lend it to you for like 2%. If you borrow that money and pay it just to nail it down onto the bank to crush your mortgage, and then you kind of pay it back over time because you've maxed out your prepayments and you can't put any more on, you can pay that back and you'll still be ahead of the game. Okay. Now, the real question is, do you have someone to borrow $6,500 from? And this is where you get to things like this, the community bank. And that sounds a little crazy, but there are some communities that do that. And some religious groups do that, where the faith hub is actually the finance hub. And I've seen this. Okay. In that sort of thing, the financial hub network, so to speak, acts as a means to beat the bank, where the bank gets paid off as fast as possible, but the community bank is doing that. And then average Joe pays back the community bank at a fraction of the cost of what the actual banks are charging. Okay. And then who wins? Well, not only does person A get their place paid down faster, but the whole community wins because person A, who paid that money down faster, now has more money to invest back into the community, not the bank. They have more money to invest in the community. Okay, so person A wins, the community wins, and the bank loses. Now, if we value our community above the values of the bank, then we should give this a shot. The question is, who is going to be the core beings of this community bank? And that's for another conversation. All right, now with all that being said, someone did ask me and said, what if instead of doing $300,000 right here and doing a $30,000 prepayment to down to $270,000 on like after day one, what if we just did a loan amount right from the beginning of $270,000 and had no prepayment? Okay, so as you can see, if we do that, it's going to change a few things. The few numbers get moved around. So what I'm going to do is just go back to the original here, and we'll look at the figures that we want to look at here. So if we have a $300,000 mortgage and everything is the same, and we have our extra payment of $627, and we have a $30,000 prepayment, let's say on day one, which is up to 10%. So there's no additional penalty given by the bank. We can see that our interest savings, okay, let's look here. Our total payments are $367. I'm going to write this down over here. $367 total payments, and total interest is $67,700 over time. And that's what we have there. Okay. So now that's 300. Let's try if we have a $270,000. Okay, we're gonna just instead of getting a $300,000 mortgage, we're just gonna put a 270 down and put an extra, like we're gonna just put 30,000 more down in our payment before we on our down payment without getting the mortgage at all, like before the mortgage. Okay, so now I've made a $270,000 mortgage there, and everything is changed accordingly. Now let's just get rid of these extra payments here. First of all, if I have no extra payments, so I just need to make sure everything is the same here. So no extra payments, what it tells me is that my principal is $564.18. So if I was to double up, I would have a $564 payment that I could do with no penalty, $564.18. So I'm gonna put that in there. And I put that in here. I don't know if it should have been here at the beginning, but I'm just going to be consistent now. So 564.18. Okay. So if I do that, and now what do I have is a $270,000 mortgage and 0 extra payments. So what I have now, let's look at our numbers here. Okay. So total payments, I'm paying only $348,000. I'm paying $348,000 in total, but look at that. My total interest is $78,000. How does that work? Okay, let's look at the, so total interest is $78,000 I'm paying. If I put
if I get a mortgage for 270 because I put $30,000 more down on my principal before the mortgage in order to get a lower mortgage rate. And the reason, again, this is happening is because if we do this, we do not have the $30,000 to skate ourselves down the mortgage curve. Okay, so again, $270,000 total interest I'm paying over the course of my thing, 78,000. Okay, now again, let's change that. Let's go to 300,000. 300,000. We're going to change this to 627 because that's the amount of that'll be my double up payment. And let's just say 627 here too. And I'm going to say $30,000 was paid on day one. There we go. Total interest we're paying is only $67,000. Okay, so the only thing that is different from situation 1 to situation 2 is that the day that when we're putting our mortgage down payment on, we're putting less money down on the principal of the house before the mortgage and getting a larger mortgage. So if you get the larger mortgage and do the additional payment, all else constant, meaning we're doing the double up payments no matter what. Okay, but if we get a $300,000 mortgage and we do a $30,000 down payment on our principal on day one of the mortgage being dispersed, the total interest we're going to be paying over the course of the full mortgage is $67,000. Whereas if we were to get a $270,000 mortgage, which sounds more intuitive, like, hey, I have less debt, this number would actually be 78,000. Okay, so we're looking at like $11,000 difference. Now I tested something else too. I said, well, that's nice if we that's what the numbers stack up if we are doing the extra payments. What would it be like if we didn't have the extra payments? So let's see here. Let's just go back to $300,000 and let's just make this a 0. Okay, so we're making 0 extra payments. So we're not doing we're not doing any double up, but we're still going to do the additional payment of 300,000. Okay, so no double up. Okay, so no double up, but we're still doing a $300,000 mortgage plus 30,000 payment on day one, and the total interest I have right there is 113,000. Okay, $113,000 I'm paying over the course of my mortgage if I do a $300,000 mortgage and I do a $30,000 payment on day one. Well, let's see what happens if I just make this into 270,000 and bring this down to a 0 payment. And now look at that. The total interest I'd be paying over the course of the mortgage is $135,000. Okay, now again, this secondary example here is where there's no double up payment. So if you're not doing the double up payment and you just have a regular old mortgage, going for the larger mortgage and then doing a massive principal payment on day one, in this case with a $300,000 mortgage, saves you basically the difference between 113 and 135,000. You save $22,000. Okay, and basically for doing nothing, $22,000 for one single decision, which is to get a higher mortgage and then do a prepayment on day one. So again, right now we have the lower mortgage. We have the lower mortgage and no prepayment, and we're paying $135,000 interest. If we get the higher mortgage and do a $30,000 prepayment, we're only paying $113,000 interest. Okay, again, that is one singular decision that is being made, and it's giving you $22,000 extra in your pocket. Now that again is for a $300,000 mortgage. What if your house was a little bigger because of inflation and your mortgage needed to be, let's say, a little bigger? So a $450,000 mortgage, and now we're going to put $45,000 on the front. Our interest is going to be $170,000. Okay, that's nice. So that's a $45,000 mortgage. A $450,000 mortgage with $45,000 being put on day one. Let's compare that to getting a $405,000 mortgage, because we've put the extra $45,000 the day before onto the initial principal in our initial down payment for the house. So we've reduced the loan by $45,000, and now we're not going to have any additional payment on day one. Let's see what that goes up to. Oh my gosh, $203,000. 203. So if the mortgage is a $450,000, if you get a $450,000 house and do a 10% payment on day one versus getting a $405,000 mortgage because you thought that putting down as much on your principal at the beginning would be the best idea, it actually turns out that getting the bigger mortgage and doing the bigger prepayment will save you $33,000. Again, $33,000 for one single decision. Again, so $203,000 if I do a straight $405,000 mortgage. Again, let's put that up to $450, just so you can see it again. There's $450, and we're going to do the $45,000 prepayment, $170. So far less. So you get the bigger mortgage. You do the massive 10% prepayment on day one, and you're saving $33,000 interest. I cannot believe this. I think we solved the problem.